India, the world's largest democracy and land of diversity, where ancient history coexists with the rapid pace of modernity and advancement. It is a nation known for its multiformity, where several people with different cultures, languages, and traditions call the same soil home. But today, this diversity seems to be crumbling under the weight of division. Tensions are boiling like never before. Is India's unity about to unravel? India had a dream of a pluralistic society, so why did it give way to these communal divisions? In this video, we will figure out the roots of India's polarization and the driving forces shaping its undetermined future. To understand why India is so divided like never before, we must study the forces that are defining its current socio-political landscape. During the last 10 years, there has been a rise in the Modi government, which is a defining chapter in India's history. There are contradictory views regarding Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Some people view him as a leader with a vision for economic growth, global stature, and a revitalized sense of patriotism. However, some others might think that his government has amplified the contrasts with policies and rhetoric that fuel polarization. At the core of this expanding disruption is the deepening tension between India's Hindu majority and Muslim minority. Such divides aren't new but have been fueled by some historical scars, heightening communal narratives in a developing political landscape. Several policies like the Citizenship Amendment Act, which fish out global criticism, or the abrogation of Article 370 in Kashmir, have ignited widespread protests and disturbance. In the meantime, incidents of mob violence, social media propaganda, and hate speech have added to the fire. As India is struggling with these fractures, here comes a sobering question. Can the country reclaim its harmony? The answer to this question is yet to be answered. But what has the Modi government to do with all this disturbance? Narendra Modi gained power in 2014, and that was the moment that marked a significant shift in India's political panorama. His election campaign was built on promises of development, economic growth, and a corruption-free India, which reached the hearts of millions. Modi portrayed himself as a leader of the people, parting himself away from elite-driven politics. For some people, his image as a self-made leader is a glimmer of hope representing a breeze of fresh air. Under his government, India stepped aboard different aspiring projects like Make in India, Digital India, and the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. These projects were aimed at revolutionizing the economy and infrastructure. Modi's expression drew attention to self-reliance, nationalism, and a united India. But seeds of disagreement lay underneath these promises. Critics assert that the nationalist agenda neglected the voices of minorities, making provisions for the deepening of divisions. Modi's rise may inspire some, but it accelerated polarizing debates over governance and identity, defining a new era for India. So what happens when the leader of the world's largest democracy makes decisions that spark both celebration and anger? Modi's tenure has been marked by certain bold moves applauded as revolutionary by some, but some considered those decisions alienating. One of those decisions was the abolishment of Article 370 in 2019, which stripped Jammu and Kashmir of its special status. His supporters applauded this as a bold move towards the integrity of the country, while critics rail against it as it was sabotaging the principles of democracy and intensifying tensions in the region. Another breaking point was the Citizens Amendment Act, which fast-tracked the citizenship for non-Muslim refugees from neighboring countries. Advocates define this as a humanitarian act, but it ignited nationwide protests, with several people describing it as a threat to secularism. The Hindutva ideology that was promoted by Modi's BJP has influenced governance, provoking debates on India's identity as a secular state. Combined with the alleged media control and use of social media, such policies have amplified concerns over the breakdown of inclusivity and democratic principles. So what is the real verdict? Step outside the headlines and you'll find a nation divided. The debate rages on. Is Modi a visionary leader or architect of its deepest divides? Public opinion regarding Modi is sharply split. According to its supporters, he is a man of vision who has reignited the sense of national pride and delivered upon his promises. From India's expanding global influence to ambitious infrastructure projects, Modi's proponents celebrate his game-changing influence. But the opposing voices paint a different story. His government is accused of providing an environment of bigotry and neglecting the hardships of minorities. The narrative of a flourishing India under the administration of Modi is opposed by the reports of an increase in communal violence, economic inequality, and limited freedom. Social media has set fire to such divides. Online platforms have become the battlegrounds for vocal critics and loyal supporters. Interviews from both the barracks uncover an evident contrast: appreciation for Modi and his policies on one hand, and the fear of deepening divides on the other. This dichotomy emphasizes the complex legacy of his government. But what is the history behind the back of the Hindu-Muslim divide, and how did it all begin? This conflict isn't a matter of a few years, but its roots lie in the colonial strategy of divide and rule. British rule exploited religious differences between both groups to continue their control, developing mistrust between them. This divide reached its peak during the partition of August 1947, which was the year when the subcontinent was divided into two countries, India and Pakistan. As a result of this split, there was a mass migration which led to unprecedented violence, with the families broken apart and the entire communities ripped out. This partition left scars that were deep enough to shape India's communal dynamics and collective memory. Although the Britishers left the subcontinent, the divisions they sowed were grown into deep-rooted trees. These divisions became a part of India's socio-cultural dynamics. This historical context established a way for the tensions that continue to define the nation today, even years after independence. Although India was independent after August 1947, its journey towards a secular nation was filled with communal challenges, but a few key events served as a turning point. In 1992, the Babri Masjid was demolished, and this ignited riots all over the country. During this lawlessness, many were dead and religious divisions deepened. 10 years after this incident, Gujarat observed one of the most horrific incidents in modern India, where Muslims bore the brunt. Modi was the chief minister of Gujarat at that time, and he faced severe criticism for his negligence. Both incidents strengthened the Hindu-Muslim divide and influenced the local dynamics and national politics of the country. Even though secularism was assured as per the Indian Constitution, such incidents demonstrated how fragile religious unity can be when faced with political and religious disturbance. So, what could be the reasons behind this persistent divide? Why Hindu-Muslim divide continue like an unhealed blister? The answer to this question lies in political exploitation and systemic injustice. Muslims are about 15% of the entire Indian population, but they've always remained underrepresented in education, politics, and the workforce. Certain stereotypes and marginalization fortify the narrative of us versus them, which has widened the gap between both communities. Political rhetoric often gives strength to such divides. The hate speech and propaganda go viral. Online platforms fuel such biases, which makes reuniting a difficult task. Although there were efforts at the grassroots level to fill these gaps, the divide remains. Structural inequalities and polarized narratives heighten that. But the question persists: will India recover from these fractures, or will it continue to shape its future? Increasing communal polarization is straining India's social fabric. Vigilante groups have committed violent crimes such as lynching of minorities because of cows, although they often claim to be defending religious views. Communities are uprooted by such events, which breeds fear and mistrust. The hate speeches by political leaders worsen the existing tensions and are amplified through social media. Spreading false information and sparking animosity, the platforms that were meant to connect became the battlefields for conflicting narratives. A toxic cycle of provocation and revenge is fueled by viral posts and videos. The voices that are calling for peace and unity are often silenced amid this chaos. India, once known for its diversity, stands the possibility of losing the harmony that was a defining characteristic of this country. Will it be possible for this nation to pull itself back from impending catastrophe? But is it just about Hindu-Muslim conflicts, or are there some deeper cracks threatening India's unity? Beyond the Hindu-Muslim divide, many other commitments and regions in India harbor separatist aspirations, each motivated by particular histories and grievances. The demand for Khalistan, a separate Sikh state, has emerged in Punjab amid a combination of political turmoil and conflicts concerning cultural identity. Assam, Nagaland, and Manipur are three of the northeastern states which have been at odds with insurgent movements, calling for greater sovereignty or complete independence. The cultural marginalization and neglect by prevailing political narratives are frequently pointed out by these neglected regions as the reason for their resentment. Ethnic divisions between the Meitei and Kuki populations in Manipur recently burst out into violence, which caused destruction and deepened mistrust. Assam's identity conflict has been endured for a long period, and separatist movements have been exacerbated by disputes over language and immigration preservation. Such fault lines represent how India's issues go well beyond religious differences with Muslims and encompass a wider fight for equity, identity, and representation in a culturally diverse nation. So who's the one bearing the burden of these economic and social inequalities? Economic and social inequalities are boiling beneath the surface, giving fuel to the fire as communal tensions grab the headlines. Communities that were already facing marginalization, particularly Muslims, struggled with limited access to healthcare, education, and employment opportunities. Such gaps widen the divide, continuing cycles of poverty and exclusion. Resentment continues to expand as a result of rising unemployment rates, particularly among youth. They see other populations as the culprits for their sufferings. Disillusioned people are more vulnerable to extreme ideologies. The economic gaps are no longer just the statistics, but they are the real breeding grounds for such divisions. To foster unity, these disparities must be addressed. The economic chasm will keep widening the social split unless targeted policies are implemented that would enhance the lot of underprivileged groups and provide equitable opportunities. But what is the real cost to society, and how are people coping with this fractured reality? The impact of such divisions is evident in the lives of everyday Indians. Families experience the pressure as old friendships are being tested by divided ideologies. The younger generation, who's been brought up in such an environment, usually inherits hate rather than bridging gaps. Nationwide protests erupt, some in support of communal agendas and others against policies that are seen as discriminatory. Religious conflicts capture media attention, and tales of harmonious coexistence are often left unsaid. In certain regions, Hindus and Muslims coexist as neighbors and share their festivals and everyday life. An assortment of emotions including fear, optimism, irritation, and resilience can be seen through the interviews of the citizens. Many yearn for a return of unity, while others feel discouraged by the widening divides. These tales illustrate the necessity of collective efforts required to rebuild mutual respect and trust in society. While there are several factors behind this divide, let's not forget the role of the media in this scenario. So has the media been a friend or foe? Media was once a cornerstone of democracy, but it has come under increasing fire for its role in widening divides. Sensationalism has replaced objective reporting in many news outlets, which often portray Muslims as the other. Biased headlines and skewed narratives fuel stereotypes and foster mistrust and fear. Social media platforms intensify such issues by acting as echo chambers, frequently spreading fake news and false information, with algorithms prioritizing sensational content over factual news. The fine line between facts and propaganda fades and leaves behind the audience struggling to figure it out. Yet not the whole media is guilty. Some independent journalists and platforms aim to provide a balanced picture. They shed light on stories of unity and resilience. The role of the media is important in molding public opinion. Time will tell if the media is a driver for polarization or a bridge to comprehension. The history of India is surely a testament to its resilience. It can rise above contrasts and find power in diversity. Although the current divides are deniable but don't define the country's future, grassroots initiatives are working across the country to bridge the gaps. Circles, dialogues, community-driven projects, and interfaith events are sowing seeds for cooperation and understanding. Every nation's power lies in its people, not politics. The fight for power must have been kept aside to heal this fractured nation. The divided nation in front of us can be healed through collective action. The future of India lies in the hands of those who are ready to strive hard for harmony over division.